Welcome to the Soul of Medicine. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Soul of Medicine. I'm Dr. Kay Corpus, and today we have Lisa Loiseau here with us today. Super excited. She's from the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area. So she's a physical therapist turned therapeutic movement coach with a passion for empowering others to transform their well-being. From her early days as a dance-loving kid to her formal education in exercise science and physical therapy, Lisa's journey has been one of continuous growth and discovery. After years working in various healthcare settings, Lisa found herself drawn to the healing power of myofascial release and yoga during a time of personal stress and caregiving. These practices sparked a deeper interest in the interconnectedness of body, mind, and nervous system. Today, Lisa specializes in helping others cultivate resilience and shift from pain and overwhelm into greater vitality through her signature P.A.I.N model. Let's dive into Lisa's inspiring story and learn how we can apply the wisdom of the P.A.I.N model in our own lives. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the introduction.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm really excited to dive in. Your background is super amazing. So could you tell us a bit about your background in healthcare and what led you to focus on therapeutic movement and the P.A.I.N model?
Yeah, so it's been quite a variety. I started out in the work rehabilitation and ergonomic setting. And then once I became a physical therapist, I was in your typical clinic. I did some hospital work, home health work. And then eventually I landed in early intervention, where most of my career was working with children birth through 6. And I am a mom to 4. So with each child I had, I worked less. And at some point, I took a bit of a hiatus. And that's when I kind of started digging into my own needs. I found a yoga class and went on and got some yoga teacher training. And for continuing education, I pursued myofascial release. And when I did re-enter the workforce, those were the pieces I added, and I would teach group classes with the elements of yoga, myofascial release, and of course, physical therapy.
That's so amazing. I love that combination too. So, we have a local physical therapist who also does myofascial release, and I love referring my patients to her, one, with the scientific background that she has, her knowledge of anatomy and physiology, plus this whole subtle modality of myofascial release, which I refer most of my patients to her. So I think it's really fabulous. So tell us more about the P.A.I.N model.
Yeah, so that came about, I would say, probably about 2 years ago. So I've pretty much folded in all the elements that I mentioned, with the exception of I didn't mention nervous system health. So I found that as a result of my own personal challenges and need. And when I found the nervous system education, that was the missing piece. So once I started adding that to my classes, I started noticing I was teaching in this rhythm. And then I think part of my early intervention days came back, and I used P.A.I.N as an acronym, P.A.I.N. So if you can picture P.A.I.N down the line, I think they call that an acrostic poem. And I started teaching using this P.A.I.N model, which kept it very simple. And the first letter, P, is for pause, just being present. And if that's all we did, we'd be 25% ahead of the game. So once you take that pause, what do you notice? What are you aware of in that moment? And following the work that I do, I often encourage folks to think about their physicality. What are they feeling physically? You can certainly be aware of what's in your environment. The I is where my work really comes in, because it's threefold, and that has evolved. So if you were to look on my website and read about my P.A.I.N model, I didn't add all of these things. But first, it's an intention. So what is the intentionality behind your pause and what you're aware of? What changes do you need to make? That would come into play with the implementing And then the third I is following your impulse. What is it that you need to do for your biological needs? The N is probably my favorite part and the most passive, and happens because you do the P and the A and the I, and then you create new pathways. And that's the basis of neuroplasticity. So new pathways come about because those neurons fire together, wire together, creating new patterns and new ways of being.
That's so beautiful. I love the your approach to it. I mean, it's very yogic, but it's also very scientific also, and that's a very nice combination to really help people access and understand, their bodies. And the nervous system, people don't really understand how jacked their nervous system, with all the stress and the overwhelm. It's been even a challenge in my own practice of relating emotions and trauma and stress to the physical body, right? So was that something that was brought up to you in your training, or is that something that was born out of your experience with yoga and myofascial release?
I would say the nervous system came out of sheer need. So I was in a medical health crisis. My skin was completely blown up. I had awful GI issues, poor boundaries. I was not doing okay. I knew I wasn't okay. From the outside, I think everybody thought I was fine because I was functional. And when I hit this, it was pretty much a rock bottom. I ended up going to therapy, and talk therapy ended up being too much too quickly for me. And it wasn't until I found a support group, and I now know I needed the collective connections that you get with other people. And the facilitator kept mentioning things like survival mode and nervous system. And I thought, what is that? And I had a little bit of shame around that, to be honest, because I thought, here, I'm a physical therapist. I should know about this. And I didn't. I didn't know the nuances of the autonomic nervous system. I kept hearing fight and flight, but there's a lot more to it than just that. So I started digging in and found a program, actually found free resources in the beginning, following the work of Irene Lyon. Found that, and I dug in right away, and I knew that that was the missing piece. And since then, I've been on a journey to learn quite a bit more.
It's so interesting. I mean, that you think, even as a physician, like all the things that you said on my TED. Now I understand why the my TEDx talk resonated with you, but that wasn't in my orbit either. I didn't know what the heck was going on with me. I mean, it makes sense now, and that's the point where I have to teach from, right? But when you're in the middle of it and I don't even know why that isn't such a primary, teaching or even brought up a lot in primary care, right? So I think that's really important. So you mentioned neuroplasticity. Can you explain to our audience more about the concept of neuroplasticity and how it relates?
Yeah, I love that idea. It's so hopeful because neuroplasticity is basically our body and our brain and our whole being's ability to make changes, for better or for worse. Essentially, it could be, turn into for worse, and that's where addictions come in. But I'm in the camp of for better. So small, consistent steps over time will make new grooves and new behaviors, new patterns, and build your capacity. And then that's the basis of neuroplasticity. There are stages of neuroplasticity that are coined from Norman Doidge. His book is The Brain Heals Itself. I believe that's the book. And from that, he talks about 5 stages of neuroplasticity, which I have come to realize it's not linear. We may need to do the housekeeping a bit. Then you can do some neurostimulation, which is one of the stages. But if you add neurostimulation too quickly to an already dysregulated system, you could slow down a bit or collapse. So if you do it with care, you can follow your impulse and recognize what the best next steps are.
I love
And that's
that.
where I can come in
Yeah.
as a coach and supporting people and giving them ideas, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love what you said, because it is hope. I was a neuroscience major in undergrad, and back then it was just like, oh, the nerves don't change, the brain doesn't change. Like, it's over. There's no talk of neuroplasticity back then, where it's just like, now that's something. And the way that I explain it to my patients is the most simplistic way is like, if you make a different choice, you can change those pathways, So it's such a portal into, then to those deeper root causes and patterns, and, that started when we were, young children, right? That get imprinted on our nervous system, and then our genesis of our identity just goes along with that. So to say that that's mutable, this is something that we can shift is really, really awesome, right?
Yes. A saying that I like to use is, with awareness, there is a choice. So as soon as you become aware, then you can make a choice. And then the onus is on that individual, which is so empowering. It's frustrating at times because sometimes things are done to an individual and you have to undo the harm that's been done. But that's where you can slip into victimhood. And I'm going to choose what I can do with this new knowledge that I have.
And that's where the empowerment comes, because as children, we don't have choice. We're doing those things, and our nervous system adapts to whatever we need to survive. But then, as adults, that we actually do have choice. And we don't sometimes recognize that we do have choice, right? And it's like, I do have a choice. I have a choice to stay, and I have a choice to go, which is also a new thing for the nervous system to get used to as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So could you walk us through a few more examples of how the P.A.I.N model can be applied in daily life, if there's anything else?
Yeah. So in my classes, I often talk about it being in a moment of pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, or you're just frustrated or having a pain point, then you're going to stop. You're going to take that pause. And in that pause, what are you aware of, for example? But it can also be done proactively. It can be done when you go out into the woods and take a walk, take a moment and take a pause, look around, orient, take notice what you're seeing. And in that awareness, what do you want to do about it? What response do you have? And that would be that impulse. Well, I think I want to walk a little bit further. Or maybe in this case, your impulse would be to go hug a tree, and then just repeating that process. But if it's in the time of pain, I'll use, let's say, traffic, for example. You just were cut off and you're really you're having some, maybe feeling heat or hot, and you take that pause. Of course, you have to be safe in your car. And maybe you're noticing in that pause, oh my goodness, my hands are gripping the steering wheel and my jaw's all gripped. Well, in that case, I have an intention to feel a little bit better. So I'm going to release my grip, maybe shake my shoulders off, look around and notice I'm safe. I'm okay. That was really scary, but I got through that. And again, just repeating that as needed.
So one place where I find this would be most helpful for my patients, and when they're actually in pain, because, a lot of times patients' relationship to pain is that we just want to get rid of it. There's something wrong with me, and, as Rumi said, like, the pain is the portal in. And I find that, which is a beautiful saying, but like, when you're in the middle of pain, it's like, we're not talking about Rumi right now. So, but this in the middle as that interim of the pause for a second, because it is when it's like pain is bad. Pain means I'm not safe. Then it starts activating that HPA axis, and then, vagal tone goes down. And
even the narrative.
Exactly. And it goes so fast. You're almost hijacked in the moment. It's really, when people tell you to breathe, it's like you're just too far gone at that point. So do you find that having a regular practice of your P.A.I.N model in times when there isn't the sensation of pain, or like in the middle of traffic, to drop the baseline down to a certain place.
Yes.
So that we can access it, because it's hard to remember to breathe when we're freaking out, like in pain, right?
Yes, yes. I was just teaching this again in my class this week, and it was mostly because all the students were new. I wouldn't have to introduce it if they were continuing to come. But I had one student in there who's been with me for about 2 years, and I said, okay, you have to hear this again. So at the end of class, she came up to me and said, can I say something to the class? And I said, absolutely. And she wanted to share to the class that for a long time, she only did the P. She only took the pause. And I thought that was amazing because she was never doing anything like that. And she said, now maybe it was just for a couple weeks. All I did was pause, but I was glad all I did was pause. And I thought that was great. And I thought it was really good for the students in my class to hear that, because sometimes it's hard to go to that next step. It's overwhelming. And even if I think about it in terms of nervous system health, if you're dysregulated, an already upset system can't handle too much. So that's a great way to pull back or to titrate and just ease in. So sometimes it doesn't even take much. It might just be take the pause.
I think that's so absolutely true, because we don't, right? And then we go automatically into fight or flight. And so it's hard to rein back in. And just that moment of just pausing, even breathing for that matter, is huge. That I love that she recognized that.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, that was heartwarming. And I thought that was really neat that she wanted to share that with the class.
As you mentioned, so some of the challenges of going even to the A, right? Is that what is happening? Is that some of the challenges that people face when trying to implement?
It could be because part of what I facilitate and suggest to students who work with me is this concept of orienting. So you're looking around your space, orienting. And for some people, orienting can be too much. The reason why we orient is to get us out of hypervigilant, of, looking around erratically and quickly, which is part of that sympathetic, I need to fight or I need to run, and to look with curiosity and exploring so that you can recognize, hey, I am okay. And here's what's in my environment, to take notice of that. It really helps you to be fully present. But it can be overwhelming for some people to start with orienting. So even that basic exercise can be a lot.
So when you're teaching
sometimes less is more.
Yes, hands down, 100%. So when you're teaching class, is it within a yoga kind of model of a class, or is it just the P.A.I.N model, or how are you teaching it?
Yes, it'll feel very much like a yoga class. I always introduce a theme, and this week, for example, was the P.A.I.N model, which is just kind of a coincidence we're talking about it. So then I do a little bit of theory. Sometimes there's an introduction if people don't know one another, we'll do that. And then we get into warming up, some movement, taking lots of pauses, doing some work on one side, noticing how that work has impacted us, then doing it on the other side. And then eventually we move ourselves into stillness, which is very similar to a shavasana at the end of a class. The thing that I can also add to my class, as I have a license to touch, is being able to offer simple things like a leg pull or a shoulder touch, which can be very supportive in that process.
So are there any other, so yoga is a great complement for this. And you said you work out in the gym. So how do you use it when you're working out?
Actually, the gym is the primary place that I do my therapeutic movement. So when I go into the gym, I have my therapy tools. I have one sitting behind me. So this is one of my balls that goes into the gym with me. Honestly, I might just grab whatever's in my car or follow my impulse, grab a few things, or use what's in the gym. do enough that I'm kind of stimulating some of my joints, kind of activating things enough that I'm like, okay, my hamstrings are a little tight. So I'm going to pay a little extra attention to those, especially if I'm going to be working on my legs. And then I'll do my exercises. And then after one set, I do some kind of follow-up therapeutic movement experience that supports that. And then I continue. And then I'm doing things like following my impulse, taking notice where my feet are. Are they on the ground? Are they up in the air? Constantly noticing my environment. Yeah. And that reminds me, when I first went to the gym, my capacity to be at the gym was incredibly low and I would be triggered. I found myself on 2 occasions in the corner of the gym. I had no idea that a gym environment would be that overwhelming for me. I was able to overcome that on a few different things. I talked about it and I went back. I didn't cower to the gym. And now I bop around the gym doing my own thing. I probably do not look like most of the people in the gym because I use the gym equipment very differently. And I'm okay with that.
Awesome. So did you pull out a gorgeous ball just now? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you do role model? Yeah.
Yes, that is definitely part of the therapeutic experience. Yes.
Yeah. I love her too. I love Jill. Yeah. So I love those as my myofascial tools. I mean, it's interesting to get that feedback when you're rolling out your feet or even have it on your back. I mean, I have it in my car.
Yes.
Or just I have in my car that I have it. But
yeah,
it's interesting because you can just walk through space and nothing's pressing up against you. You never knew that, like, those trigger points or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So yes. In fact, using those balls would be a great place to practice the P.A.I.N model because you could do that rolling out until you find what I call that sweet spot or that body blind spot. Hang on to that for a bit because if you're only there for a few seconds, it's not going to make much of a difference anyway. And in that pause, go through that process. Okay, I'm aware that my teeth are feeling, gripped, or my fingers are tense, or my toes are curled. Okay, well, what do I want to do about it? I don't really need to have my jaw clenched or my toes curled, so I'm going to let them go while I hang out on this ball. So that's a great opportunity to do the P.A.I.N model.
That's actually really brilliant. I love all that internal. It's not just dialogue, but that process too when you're doing role model, which is, you see sometimes people on role, there's like the harder, the faster, the better. And it's actually like, then that activates the nervous system and it causes more pain. So
I tell my students that soft tissue needs soft work.
Exactly.
So use the soft balls, no lacrosse balls.
Yes. So what's interesting is that, I mean, it's just working with the body, I feel like on a consistent, maybe even daily basis of having that kind of feedback and putting yourself in like non-threatening situations, so you don't have to figure it out. So my question was going to be, and I can already sense it too, has your nervous system downshifted quite a bit, since you started this work?
Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness. I think my kids would even tell you that I'm pretty chill and I wasn't always like this. And I still have work to do. And that's why I live this work and I love this work. But yes, I feel so much better. I've grown in capacity. My body has changed. Because of the work I've done with the nervous system, I've been able to stay in the gym. As I said, it was triggering in the beginning, but I've been able to put on 30 pounds. And that's something that I very much needed to do because that was another piece of my journey is I lost a lot of weight. That's kind of how my depression showed.
And yeah, definitely. So what resources would you recommend for somebody who wanted to learn more about the P.A.I.N model and start applying to your life? Do you do online classes or do you?
I do not do online classes. As a licensed physical therapist, I can only work with individuals in Pennsylvania one-on-one. I am in the midst of considering doing some online basic classes that anybody can do. I have to find the nuances of that. But right now I'm working primarily one-on-one with individuals in my hometown and do the group work. And then I get around to different places, spaces that are asking for, whether it's a wellness event or a school who's looking for, like, Girls on the Run, for example. They'll have me come in and do different activities with them. And I use all of these same tools. I may call it something. Sometimes I do call it yoga, or whatever they want to call it. And I still have the same types of exercises that can be modified for whichever age, senior centers and such. Mm-hmm.
Well, definitely coming on as a yoga teacher online would be, you could do that online, right? I'm just seeing how my patients here in Kentucky could potentially access some of your work. So I don't know.
Well, we certainly could talk about that. Yeah. I'm open to that. This online platform is new for me. Yes. So I might need my hand held a little bit.
I think it's really cool. I think it's really important. I love what you've come up with. So anything else around the P.A.I.N model or any of your work that you'd like to share with us?
I was reading about, or I was watching one of your clips, and you were talking about the chakras. And it's not so much a question, but I was thinking about the connection of chakras and the work that I do, and thinking about how the glands align. Like, that is amazing to me. Like when you think about the root chakra being the adrenal glands, and there's a lot of work, that therapeutic movement does around working on the kidney adrenal interface. And of course, you have the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. All of those things can be tapped into with different practices. So I was thinking about that connection.
Well, it's interesting. What came to me when you said that is that because there's something underneath the pain, right? And it is that whatever that emotion is, and each chakra holds, so whether it be fear or shame or guilt or loss or, whatever, it is with each chakra, it's like settling that pain enough to be able to get to those deeper emotions in there. So yeah, the connection with the physicality, the spirituality, the emotions, the environment, and all those plexi are really interesting. So for me, like when I teach functional medicine, like my 8-week program is based on the chakra system. So each week is a chakra. So for instance, week 1 was we review the adrenals, but there's a lot around what is the fear, fight, or flight, and then the second was about the sex hormones. So we could review what the sex hormones are and how to test them and how to do hormone replacement if that's what they want to do. But it's also about, shame, and it's also about creativity, and it's also about, feminine frequency. So I have found that whole system to just organize the physical body for me when I'm teaching. So that's how I use it.
I was thinking about it, felt organized.
Yeah.
For sure. Yes. And there's science.
Definitely.
That's the amazing thing. It's science.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like I was even thinking, one of the exercises we do is around, like in yoga, we called it the heart space. And the physical name of it in the program that I'm studying is this mediastinum. And there's, an exercise, a neurosensory exercises to get into that. Boy, that's powerful. It's powerful. A lot holds in there. At least it was for me. I mean, everyone's experience with it would be different, of course.
I was just like, ooh, you should do an 8-week course on your P.A.I.N model with each chakra. That would be super, super cool. And do, one open or whatever.
We could certainly collaborate on something.
Yeah, totally. That's kind of cool, actually, to have it, all those different kinds of, emotions. Because people, like you said, like need awareness around that, or you need a minute around that particular area,
Yeah.
So Create Karma. Did you Did you study with Create Karma or another?
No, I studied with Yoga Life Institute, Bob Utera in the Philadelphia area.
Oh, okay.
I did 500 hours with him.
Nice. So Create Karma was also, she divided it up into that same way with the chakras. So each that's sort of how I learned how to do it that way. But each month or each weekend, whatever, was a chakra. So everything around that weekend of how to do a sit, all the poses that go in under first chakra, for instance, and all the emotional stuff going around that. But yeah, you won't miss anything if you hit all 7, right? So it's pretty foundational and to me feels complete. So yeah, that's cool. Well, how can our listeners find out more about you, your pain model, just follow you on social?
Yeah, so social media, it's Lisa Loiseau, MPT. And I have a website, Move Well with Lisa. I'm not sure when or if this will air. I don't know if you air all of these, but I do have an upcoming foundations course. And my foundations course, for me, my recommendation would be like the best first step, because I support students who come to that with very basic foundational. It's rich, it's dense, but it's basic. And then you can take the next step, which would be one-on-one work or the classes. But that course is coming up in November on the 17th. So I don't know when this will go out, but on the 17th in Lancaster, I will have that course, which is held monthly. And I love that course because it's that first opportunity to share these concepts. And it feels like a workshop because we're digging in for about 2 hours. And then there's not only the theory, there's practical exercises to support it. So you can put it to work right away.
Wow. That's amazing. So good.
It's fun. I enjoy it. It doesn't really feel like work.
How beautiful. Well, I love how everything is integrated, and sometimes we have to go through those things in our lives and then come out as the wounded healer. Those wounds are really our initiations into our next offering to the world. So, kind of sometimes maybe sucked at the time, but it was for a purpose. And that's for me too, sort of what happened with myself. So thank you so much. I mean, you really embody what soul medicine, what our podcast is all about. We really do feature, holistic healers who've had to have their moment in that and become these healers out of that initiation and have their own experience so they can offer their gift to the world. So I appreciate it so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Soul of Medicine podcast, where science meets soul for whole health healing. Are you ready to reclaim your energy, vitality, and soul purpose? Then feel free to head to our website at kcorpusmd.com and schedule an appointment for your root cause review.